I'm Natalie Peterson, 32, and I never thought checking my phone during a coffee break would change everything. My screen lit up with a text that made my stomach drop. We think it's best if you don't come to Thanksgiving this year. Your sister Megan is in charge of the gathering. I had to read it twice. 3 weeks ago, I'd paid off my parents' $78,000 debt. Now they didn't want me at Thanksgiving? My hands trembled as I set down my coffee, wondering what I'd done wrong. Before I tell you how I responded to this gut punch, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if family drama stories resonate with you. Trust me, this gets complicated. Growing up in our modest colonial home in Hartford, Connecticut, our family was the definition of close-knit. My dad, Frank, worked as a small business owner running a hardware store that had been in the family for 2 generations, while my mom, Diane, taught 2nd grade at the local elementary school. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough. Family dinners were non-negotiable, and holiday gatherings were sacred. My sister Megan and I shared a bedroom until I left for college. Despite being only 3 years apart, we were different in every way. I was the planner, the responsible one who saved birthday money and babysitting cash. Megan lived in the moment, creative and spontaneous, but often needing bailouts when her plans fell through. Still, we were close through childhood, sharing secrets and dreams while staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on our bedroom ceiling. After high school, I worked my way through the University of Massachusetts with a partial scholarship, 2 part-time jobs, and student loans that I paid off within 5 years of graduating. I started as an entry-level financial advisor assistant and climbed steadily, becoming one of the youngest senior advisors at my firm in Boston. At 30, she started 3 different college programs but never finished any of them. She tried being a yoga instructor, then a freelance graphic designer, then worked at a series of boutiques and cafes. Nothing seemed to stick. 2 years ago, when her latest apartment share fell through, she moved back into our parents' guest house, temporarily, she said. She was still there, working part-time at a local gallery and picking up odd graphic design gigs. I first noticed something was wrong with my parents' finances during a weekend visit last spring. Mom kept deflecting when I asked about their planned Alaska cruise, a 40th anniversary trip they'd been saving for. Dad seemed unusually stressed, snapping at small things and disappearing to his workshop for hours. When I found past due notices in their mail stack while helping Mom sort through papers, I gently pressed for answers. After some reluctance, the truth came out in tearful chunks of explanation. Dad's hardware store had been struggling for years as big-box retailers moved into the area. He'd taken out loans to keep it afloat. Then Mom needed unexpected back surgery that their insurance only partially covered. They'd maxed out credit cards, taken a second mortgage, and were 3 months behind on payments. The total was staggering $78,000 in high-interest debt that was drowning them with minimum payments. We didn't want to worry you girls, Mom said, dabbing at her eyes. You've worked so hard to build your own life, Natalie. And we knew Megan couldn't help, Dad added quietly. She's barely staying afloat herself. They'd hidden it from everyone, their friends, their siblings, and especially from us. Dad was planning to sell the store, their only source of income besides Mom's teacher's pension. The house where we grew up would likely be next. I couldn't let that happen. After running the numbers, I developed a plan. I had savings earmarked for an investment property. Plus my year-end bonus was coming. It would clean me out temporarily, but my career trajectory was stable. I could rebuild my savings. My parents initially refused. Absolutely not, Dad said firmly when I proposed paying off their debts. That's your future money. Think of it as an investment in our family legacy, I countered. The house stays in the family, and you can leave me the store in your will if you want to make it even. I tried to joke, but tears welled in my eyes. It took 2 more months of gentle persuasion. I showed them how their debt was growing faster than they could manage. I created spreadsheets demonstrating how my financial position could handle the temporary setback. Finally, they accepted. 3 weeks ago, I drove home with a cashier's check and paid off everything: the second mortgage, the medical bills, the credit cards, the business loans. We sat at their kitchen table as I made the final calls to creditors. Mom couldn't stop crying. Dad, a man who rarely showed emotion, hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. You saved our home, he whispered hoarsely. Somehow, we'll make this right. We'll pay you back, Mom promised, though we all knew their fixed income made that unlikely. Just take care of yourselves, I said. That's all the repayment I need. Megan wasn't there for any of this. She'd gone to a weekend art festival with friends. When she returned, Mom and Dad told her they'd worked out their financial troubles, but didn't share specifics at my request. I didn't want Megan to feel uncomfortable or indebted to me. Family dynamics were complicated enough. In the weeks after, communication with my parents grew strangely sparse. Mom, who typically called twice a week, had only sent brief texts. Dad, who loved to email random news articles or dad jokes, went silent. I attributed it to embarrassment over the financial situation, or perhaps they were just busy reorganizing their lives now that the debt burden had lifted. Then Megan mentioned her new boyfriend in a rare sister catch-up call. Trevor was in real estate and super successful. They'd been dating for about a month. But she was already bringing him around the family home regularly. Mom and Dad love him, she gushed. He's helping them think about their retirement options. That raised a small flag in my mind, but I pushed it aside. After all, my sister was finally showing interest in something stable. Maybe Trevor was a good influence. Then came the text that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. The text arrived at 10:17 a.m. on a Monday. We think it's best if you don't come to Thanksgiving this year. Your sister Megan is in charge of the gathering. We want a stress-free holiday without discussions about money or life choices. We love you, Mom and Dad. I read it again, certain I'd misunderstood. Thanksgiving was our tradition. I always took Wednesday off to help Mom prep the turkey and make my signature cranberry orange relish and sweet potato casserole. Dad and I would watch football while peeling potatoes. These weren't just traditions, they were our connection points. I called immediately. The call went to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I texted back, is everything okay? Did I do something wrong? Can we talk about this? 20 minutes later, another text. Everything is fine. Megan wants to host this year with Trevor. We think it's best to keep things simple. We'll plan something with you after the holidays. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I tried to formulate a response that didn't sound desperate or angry. I settled on, I'm confused and hurt. Can we please talk about this directly? No response came. I tried calling twice more during lunch. Straight to voicemail. The physical symptoms hit as I sat in my office staring at my phone. My hands trembled so badly I had to set it down. My heart raced, my stomach churned, and a cold sweat broke out across my forehead. Alicia listened, wide-eyed, as I showed her the texts and explained the backstory. Let me get this straight, she said, setting down her fork with a clatter. You emptied your savings to rescue them from financial ruin, and 3 weeks later they're uninviting you from Thanksgiving? That's not just rude, it's cruel. Maybe I came across as judgmental when I helped them, I suggested, searching for any explanation that might hurt less than outright rejection. Maybe they feel embarrassed. Embarrassed people send thank you cards and make you extra pie. They don't exile you from family holidays, Alicia countered. Something else is going on. What do you know about this Trevor guy? Almost nothing. He's in real estate. Megan's crazy about him. They've only been dating a month or so. And suddenly he's co-hosting Thanksgiving? That's moving awfully fast. Alicia's eyes narrowed. You need to call your sister. I thought about last Thanksgiving, Mom, and I dancing to Motown in the kitchen while basting the turkey. Dad sneaking pieces of my pecan pie before dinner, Megan showing us her latest artwork. We'd stayed up late playing board games and laughing until our sides hurt. How had we gone from that to a cold, formal text? After work, I called Megan from my condo. Unlike my parents, she answered on the third ring. Oh, hey, she said, her voice clipped. Background noise suggested she was in a public place. What's up? Megan, what's going on? Mom and Dad just uninvited me from Thanksgiving. Did I do something wrong? A pause. They didn't uninvite you. They're just giving me a chance to host this year with Trevor. By specifically telling me not to come? My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay calm. Look, they're stressed about the holidays. They don't need your judgment about their finances or lifestyle right now. Judgment? Megan, I help them. Yeah. Some of us are trying to find solutions that don't involve financial dependency. What are you talking about? They were drowning in debt. Trevor says there are better ways to handle family assets than just throwing money at problems. We're developing a long-term plan for mom and dad's security. I heard a male voice in the background, smooth, confident. Is that the property assessment call? Tell them we need the figures before Friday. I have to go, Megan said abruptly. Look. I pulled out old family photo albums and scrolled through digital pictures on my laptop. Last Christmas. Mom's birthday. The family vacation to Cape Cod 2 summers ago. In every image. We looked happy, connected. Was it all an illusion? Had my family been harboring resentment toward me all this time? Sleep eluded me. Around 2 a.m., I made a decision. I would respect their request for space at Thanksgiving, however painful. But I wouldn't ignore the warning bells ringing in my head. Something wasn't right. And I needed to find out what was happening. The next morning, I called Helen Martinez, my mom's best friend since college who lived 3 streets over from my parents. Helen had been like an aunt to me growing up, and I knew she'd give me honest answers. Natalie, sweetheart. So good to hear from you. Are you calling about the renovation? Isn't it exciting? My confusion must have transmitted through the phone because she quickly added, oh, maybe it's supposed to be a surprise for when you visit next. What renovation? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. The contractors have been at your parents' house all week. Big trucks, lots of samples coming in and out. I assumed you knew, since Megan said it was a family project. After gently extracting what information Helen had, which wasn't much beyond visual observations, I thanked her and hung up. Renovation? My parents had just been on the brink of financial collapse. Where were they getting money for contractors? Wilson, an observant retiree who'd lived next door my entire life. Oh, Natalie. Your folks mentioned you weren't coming for Thanksgiving. Everything okay? I sidestepped the question. Your dad said something about modernizing for the next chapter. Nice young man, very professional. Always talking about equity and investments. Equity. The word landed like a stone in my stomach. I've seen it on his car, one of those magnetic door signs. Very fancy Audi he drives. I thanked him and immediately went to my laptop. Cornerstone Family Property Investments had a slick website featuring Trevor Adams as the founder and CEO. The company specialized in helping families leverage untapped equity in their properties for maximum financial benefit. Their services included family trust creation and intergenerational wealth planning. Multiple testimonials praised Trevor for finding money we didn't know we had. A professional headshot showed a handsome man in his mid-30s with carefully styled hair and the practiced smile of someone who was used to selling. But it was the About Us page that made my blood run cold, specializing in helping senior homeowners access equity through strategic refinancing and property utilization. I called Jackson, my colleague who specialized in real estate law. I need a favor, I said when he answered. Can you run a background check on a real estate investment company? I gave him the details and briefly explained my concerns. I'll see what I can find. In the meantime, have you checked public records? If they're taking out new loans or creating legal entities, that would be filed with the county. The suggestion led me to the county records website. After 20 minutes of searching, I found a new mortgage application filed 2 days ago, with my parents' house as collateral. The loan amount, $225,000. Their house had been free and clear after I paid off the second mortgage. As I stared at the screen in disbelief, a text came through from my cousin Dana. Heard you're not coming to Thanksgiving. Is it because of the renovation plans? Seems extreme to miss the holiday over a house project. I called her immediately. What renovation plans? Megan's been telling everyone that you disapprove of their plans to convert your parents' house into a multi-generational living space or something. Trevor's company is handling it. She said you threw a fit because you weren't consulted. Dana, I literally just found out about this 5 minutes ago. After a moment of shocked silence, she said, that doesn't match what Megan's been saying at all. We compared notes. And I learned that Megan had been telling family members for weeks that I was controlling and upset about not being included in the family business venture. Meanwhile, when Jackson called back that afternoon, his news confirmed my worst fears. "This Trevor Adams has a pattern," he said grimly. "He targets cash-poor, asset-rich families, particularly those with recently paid-off mortgages or inheritances. He creates family trusts with himself or his romantic partners as trustees, takes out equity loans, then funnels the money into investment opportunities that mysteriously fail. By the time the families realize what's happening, they've lost their equity and sometimes their homes." "Has he been prosecuted?" I asked, feeling sick. "Charged twice, never convicted. He's careful to get proper signatures and stays just within legal boundaries. 3 complaints with the Better Business Bureau in the last year alone, all from families of seniors." I thanked Jackson and hung up, my mind racing. A final search of the county records revealed the most devastating document of all, a power of attorney form filed last week, giving Megan decision-making authority over my parents' financial affairs. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. Trevor had identified my parents as perfect targets. Their house was now free of debt thanks to me. They were at retirement age. And they had a daughter, Megan, who could be manipulated into facilitating his scheme. They were being coached to distance themselves from me because I represented a threat to his plan, someone with financial knowledge who would spot the red flags immediately. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by printouts of loan documents, trust paperwork, and Trevor's business history. My family wasn't just excluding me from Thanksgiving, they were being systematically separated from me by someone who intended to steal their most valuable asset. Tomorrow was Tuesday. Thanksgiving was Thursday. I had very little time to stop what was happening before my parents lost everything again. I called in sick to work the next morning and made the 2-hour drive to my parents' house in Connecticut. The familiar streets of my hometown did nothing to calm my nerves. As I turned onto our street, the evidence of Trevor's influence was immediately visible. A large dumpster sat in the driveway. Most telling was the sleek black Audi convertible behind it, a car that cost more than most legitimate real estate agents make in a year. I parked across the street, gathered my folder of evidence, and approached the house where I'd grown up. Before I could even knock, the door swung open. My mother stood there, her expression shifting from surprise to something that looked unsettlingly like guilt. "Natalie," she said, her voice small. "We weren't expecting you." "Clearly." I gestured to the construction equipment. "Doing some remodeling." She stepped back to let me in, wringing her hands, a nervous habit I'd recognized my entire life. "Just some updates. Trevor says it will increase the property value." The interior of my childhood home was in disarray. Furniture had been pushed to the center of the living room, paint samples dotted the walls, and blueprints covered the dining table. My father sat in his recliner, looking uncomfortable and out of place in his own home. When he saw me, he straightened but didn't get up. "Natalie, and now you're taking out another mortgage and renovating." Before he could answer, Megan emerged from the kitchen, her face flushing when she saw me. "What are you doing here? You weren't invited." I was concerned, and apparently with good reason. I set my purse down, making it clear I wasn't leaving quickly. "Why is there a new $225? Walking in from the kitchen with the confident stride of someone who believed he belonged. He was even more polished in person than in his photos, expensive haircut, tailored casual clothes, and a smile that didn't reach his calculating eyes. "You must be the famous Natalie," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard so much about you. Trevor Adams, Cornerstone Family Investments." I ignored his hand. "I know who you are. I also know about the complaints filed against you in Hartford, New Haven, and Stamford. 3 families who lost their homes after you helped them leverage their equity." His smile flickered, but didn't disappear. "Misunderstandings, all of them. Business involves risk. And not everyone understands that." "Natalie, stop it." Megan moved to stand beside Trevor, slipping her hand into his. "You're just jealous because Trevor is helping Mom and Dad build real wealth, not just throwing money at their debt like some financial band-aid." "Building wealth?" I opened my folder and spread documents across the coffee table. Let's talk about what's really happening. You've convinced Mom and Dad to take out a massive loan against their paid-off house, their only significant asset. You've created a family trust with Megan as trustee, who conveniently now has power of attorney. And let me guess, the loan money is going into investment opportunities through Cornerstone. My father shifted uncomfortably. We're just exploring options, Natalie. Trevor has some interesting ideas for generating passive income. Like what? What exactly is this money being invested in? Trevor smoothly interjected. We're looking at several promising ventures, vacation rental conversions, property flipping opportunities, some commercial real estate investments. Specific projects, Trevor. Names, locations. Projected returns, risk assessments. He waved dismissively. Those details are still being finalized. The important thing is getting the capital working for your parents instead of sitting idle in their home equity. I turned to my parents. Mom, Dad, the money isn't sitting idle. It's providing you with a place to live without a mortgage payment. That's what I gave you by paying off your debts. My voice cracked. 3 weeks ago, you were grateful. What changed? The Wilson family in Stamford. The Ramirezes in New Haven. The Jacksons in Hartford. All of them worked with you. All of them took out equity loans. All of them invested through your promising ventures. All of them lost everything. I placed the papers in front of my parents. This is what you're signing up for. Trevor's demeanor changed instantly. Those situations were completely different. And I don't appreciate you coming in here spreading lies and creating family discord. They've opened an investigation into your business practices. Did you mention that to my parents before they signed the loan documents? A shadow of doubt crossed my father's face. Diane, maybe we should reconsider. At least until we can verify. Frank, don't let her manipulate you, Trevor interrupted. This is exactly what she wants, to keep you dependent on her. To maintain control. The accusation stung, but I pressed on. Dad, have you even seen a business plan? Specific properties? Anything concrete beyond Trevor's promises? And where does Trevor's fee come from? I asked quietly. How much of that loan is going directly to Cornerstone before any investing happens? Trevor's facade finally cracked. That's enough. You've overstayed your welcome, Natalie. If you can't support your family's decisions, then I think you should leave. Their decision or yours? I stood my ground. Mom, Dad, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to protect you from someone who has a documented history of exploiting families exactly like ours. Megan's eyes flashed with renewed anger. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Is that what you think? That I helped them to feel superior? Why else would you swoop in with your perfect job and perfect money? You've always needed to be the responsible one, the successful one, while I'm just the failure living in the guest house. Tears welled in her eyes. Megan, I never thought that. It doesn't matter what you thought, she shouted. This is our chance to do something important without your help. Trevor believes in me and us as a family. He sees potential where you just see problems to fix. My mother finally spoke up, her voice trembling. Natalie, please. We appreciate what you did for us. But Trevor has shown us a path to real financial independence. By going $225,000 into debt? That's not independence, Mom. That's the opposite. Trevor moved between us, physically separating me from my family. I think we're done here. Frank, Diane, we have a meeting with the contractor in 20 minutes. Megan, why don't you show your sister out? My childhood confidant stood firmly beside a man she barely knew, against the sister who had always been there for her. If you sign those investment papers, you might lose everything. I walked out of my childhood home with tears streaming down my face. In the driveway, I paused to look back at the house where I'd grown up. His online reviews were positive, with several mentioning his help in recovering from investment scams. Lawrence arrived looking nothing like Trevor. Where Trevor was polished and sleek, Lawrence was rumpled and practical, with reading glasses perched on his head and a weathered leather briefcase. I've been following Trevor's activities, he explained after introductions. When I saw the Peterson trust filing in the county records, I did some digging. Your financial background raised a flag. Trevor typically avoids families with financially savvy members. Yet here we are, I said grimly. Your sister created an unusual opportunity. Trevor uses romantic relationships to gain access and trust. Lawrence sipped his coffee. We parted ways 3 years ago when I realized what he was doing to clients. By the time families understand they've been manipulated, the money's gone. Is what he's doing illegal? I asked. That's the problem. He operates in gray areas. He ensures all paperwork is properly signed. The investments are real, just extremely high risk and structured to pay him regardless of outcome. When they inevitably fail, he blames market conditions. Lawrence outlined Trevor's pattern: identify families with substantial equity and vulnerable members. The emotional isolation is part of his strategy, Lawrence explained. He separates targets from financially knowledgeable family members like you. How do I stop him? Thanksgiving is in 2 days, and they're ready to sign investment papers. Lawrence considered this. Legal options are limited if your parents are willing participants. But there's one potential avenue: the cooling-off period. He explained that Connecticut law provided a 72-hour rescission period for certain contracts, including newly established trusts. If my parents signed trust documents within the past 3 days, they could still legally revoke them. With Lawrence's guidance, I spent the next several hours crafting a strategy. Lawrence agreed to contact 2 families who had been willing to speak about their experiences with Trevor. Jackson offered legal support and document preparation. I returned to my condo that evening with a plan, but also the heartbreaking realization that I would indeed be spending Thanksgiving alone. Thursday morning arrived cold and clear. I woke early. Rather than wallow in self-pity, I channeled my energy into final preparations. Lawrence had gathered statements from Trevor's previous victims. Jackson had prepared rescission documents. My mother's friend, standing there with a foil-covered plate. I couldn't bear the thought of you alone today, she said, stepping inside. And I have some news. Your mother called me this morning. Very upset. She and your father had an argument about the renovation plans. She mentioned having second thoughts. As we talked in my kitchen, my doorbell rang again. This time it was Mr. Wilson. Was brief but clear. Natalie, Trevor is pushing us to sign papers tomorrow. Your father is resistant after what you said. Please help if you can. I'm sorry about Thanksgiving. Love, Mom. Who had convinced one of Trevor's former victims to speak directly with my parents. What had started as the worst Thanksgiving of my life was transforming into something else, a rallying of support. While I'd been focused on the painful rejection by my immediate family, I'd overlooked the extended network of people who cared about us. That evening, as I picked out a small turkey breast I'd prepared for myself, I had a realization that changed my perspective entirely. This wasn't just about money or a house. It was about the true meaning of family protection. I had tried to protect my parents financially by paying their debts. And Megan, her harsh words came from a place of insecurity and jealousy that I'd never fully acknowledged. By treating her like the irresponsible younger sister who needed to be managed, I'd contributed to the dynamic Trevor was exploiting. I called Alicia, who had been texting supportive messages throughout the day. I've been thinking about this all wrong, I told her. She asked. I'm going back tomorrow, I said firmly. But this time, I'm not going as the financial advisor daughter with all the answers. I'm going as the sister and daughter who loves them and wants them to make informed choices about their future. The next morning, Black Friday, I drove back to Connecticut with Lawrence, Jackson, and the documents we'd prepared. I'd texted my mother, coming by around noon. Just want to talk. No pressure. Her response was a single word that gave me hope: good. As we approached my parents' house, I felt a strange calm replace the anxiety that had consumed me for days. Whatever happened, I would know I had done everything possible to protect the people I loved. When we arrived at the house, Trevor's Audi was already in the driveway. I introduced Lawrence and Jackson to my mother. We entered to find my father sitting stiffly on the couch, Trevor at the dining table surrounded by documents, and Megan standing by the window, arms crossed defensively. The tension in the room was palpable. Trevor's smooth facade faltered when he saw me with 2 unfamiliar men. Natalie, this is a private family meeting. I am family, I replied calmly. And I've brought some people who can help us all make informed decisions. Before Trevor could object, my father stood up. I want to hear what they have to say, Trevor. You've been rushing us all week, and I'm not signing anything until I understand exactly what we're getting into. Lawrence stepped forward. Mr. Peterson, I'm Lawrence Bennett. I used to be Trevor's business partner until I discovered his pattern of exploiting families through high-risk investments. Trevor's face darkened. Lawrence. Still bitter about being bought out. I see. These are baseless accusations from a failed businessman. Are they baseless? Jackson produced a folder. I've brought documentation of complaints filed with the Connecticut Real Estate Commission, testimonials from 3 families who lost their homes after investing with Cornerstone, and the preliminary findings of an ongoing investigation into Mr. Adams' business practices. As Jackson laid out the evidence, my mother moved to sit beside my father, their hands finding each other. Trevor attempted to interrupt several times, but my father silenced him with uncharacteristic firmness. Let them finish, Trevor. We're going to hear everything before making any decisions. Lawrence addressed my parents directly. The trust documents you signed 3 days ago can still be rescinded under Connecticut's cooling-off laws. I've prepared the paperwork if you choose to do so. This is ridiculous, Trevor snapped, gathering his documents. I've presented a legitimate business opportunity to help your family build wealth. If you're going to let your daughter's jealousy derail your financial future, that's your choice. The phone rang, interrupting his tirade. My mother answered, then held out the receiver. It's for you, Trevor. Someone named Mrs. Hernandez? Trevor froze momentarily before taking the phone. His expression shifted from confidence to concern as he listened. Who is Mrs. Hernandez? I whispered to Lawrence. Trevor turned to Megan, his last potential ally. Megan, tell them they're overreacting. We've discussed the opportunities. But Megan's face had lost its defensive hardness. You told me those other families made bad decisions that you advised against. You said they were trying to blame you for their mistakes. That's exactly what happened. Then why did Mrs. Hernandez say you specifically directed her to invest in a property that didn't even exist? Megan's voice trembled. Were you lying to her, or are you lying to me? Trevor's mask finally slipped completely, revealing the calculating operator beneath. This is why I told you to keep your financial advisor sister away, he hissed. You were the perfect setup, grateful parents with a newly clear title, a resentful sister living on site, and a house with substantial equity in a rising market. He grabbed his briefcase. What this family has can't be measured in equity or leveraged in your schemes. It's worth far more than money. After Trevor stormed out, a heavy silence fell over the living room. My mother was the first to break it, tears streaming down her face as she crossed the room to embrace me. I'm so sorry, Natalie. We were so desperate to pay you back somehow. I've always been proud of you. My father joined us, his eyes wet. We felt so ashamed after you had to rescue us. Trevor said he could help us build something that would let us repay you. It seemed like the perfect solution. Until he started pushing us to exclude you, my mother added. That's when I started having doubts. But he'd already convinced Megan that you looked down on me for not being successful like you. It felt good to finally be the one with the answers, to be helping Mom and Dad instead of always needing help myself. Her voice broke. Terminate the power of attorney and begin the process of canceling the new mortgage. Having heard fragments of the story, Cousin Dana brought leftovers from her Thanksgiving dinner. Uncle Robert, a retired attorney, offered additional legal support. Aunt Sarah simply brought hugs and her famous pecan pie. By evening, what had begun as one of the worst days of my life had transformed into an impromptu family gathering centered on honesty and healing. We sat around the dining table, sharing food and beginning the difficult conversations that Trevor had tried to prevent. I was jealous of your success, Megan admitted over coffee. Everything seems so easy for you, college. I measure everything by financial stability because that's my world. But there are many definitions of success. My parents spoke openly about their shame over their financial troubles and their desperate desire to repay me somehow. I explained that my help hadn't been a transaction requiring repayment. It was an expression of love and gratitude for everything they had given me growing up. As Lawrence prepared to leave, he shared a final observation. Trevor preys on family disconnection. The best protection against people like him isn't financial literacy, though that helps. It's family transparency and communication. Looking around at my assembled family, I realized the truth in his words. Money had never been our real problem. It was our inability to be vulnerable with each other. But we could help ensure there would be fewer victims in the future. I think, my father said as we cleared the dishes together, we should plan a proper Thanksgiving redo next weekend. With your cranberry relish and sweet potatoes. I'd like that, I replied, feeling the weight of the past week finally beginning to lift. Later that night, as I prepared to drive back to Boston, Megan walked me to my car. I've been thinking, she said hesitantly. Maybe I could come shadow you at work sometime? Not to become a financial advisor necessarily, but to understand your world better. I hugged her tightly, recognizing the olive branch for what it was. I'd love that. And maybe you could teach me some of your graphic design skills in exchange? My presentations could use some creative help. As I drove home under a canopy of stars, I reflected on the strange journey of the past week. Isn't defined by perfect harmony or financial support or even shared holidays. It's defined by the willingness to fight for each other when it matters most, to speak difficult truths with love, and to choose connection over comfort. By the time I reached my condo, my perspective had shifted entirely. I hadn't lost a Thanksgiving. I'd gained something far more valuable, a family bound by honesty rather than obligation, by choice rather than circumstance. And that was worth celebrating any day of the year. 3 months after the Thanksgiving that wasn't, I hosted a family dinner in my Cambridge condo. As I set out appetizers and checked the roast chicken in the oven, I marveled at how much had changed in such a short time. My parents arrived first, bearing a bottle of wine and homemade rolls. They looked different, somehow lighter, more at ease. The shame that had shadowed them after their financial troubles had finally lifted, replaced by a quiet dignity born of facing difficult truths. The financial literacy class was actually fun. I've set up that budgeting app you recommended, Natalie. It's actually addictive watching our emergency fund grow. They had downsized sensibly, and Dad had taken on a part-time consultant role with a larger hardware chain, sharing his decades of expertise. They were living within their means for the first time in years, finding satisfaction in simplicity rather than anxiety in excess. Megan arrived next, her arms full of portfolio samples. I've got mock-ups for your presentation next week, she announced, kissing my cheek. I think the blue palette works better than the green. My sister had undergone perhaps the most profound transformation. After the Trevor debacle, she had channeled her embarrassment into determination. She'd enrolled in a digital marketing certificate program and had begun building a legitimate freelance business, absorbing the basics of financial planning with unexpected enthusiasm. I'll never be a numbers person like you, she had admitted. But understanding this stuff makes me feel more in control of my own future. We had established a new tradition, monthly family dinners rotating between our homes, each preceded by what we jokingly called the Peterson Family Financial Summit. We reviewed budgets, discussed goals, and addressed concerns transparently. No topic was off limits. No question too basic or awkward. As we gathered around my dining table that evening, I reflected on the lessons we'd learned through our ordeal. First, financial assistance without emotional understanding creates vulnerability rather than security. By paying my parents' debts without addressing the underlying patterns, Megan's jealousy of my success and my judgment of her choices had festered because we never discussed them openly. Trevor had merely exploited fractures that already existed in our relationships. Third, and perhaps most importantly, love and money make complicated partners. Financial transactions between family members carry emotional weight that dollars can't measure. She pulled a check from her purse and handed it to me. It wasn't a large amount, but it represented her first payment toward what she now insisted was our investment in our parents' future. You don't have to do this, I said, touched by the gesture. I know. That's why I want to. We're partners now, different strengths, same team. My father raised his glass. We had created something more valuable than any legal entity, a foundation of honesty, respect, and shared purpose. After dinner, as we cleaned up together, my mother pulled me aside. "Trevor contacted your father last week," she said quietly. "Claimed he had a special investment opportunity he wanted to offer as an apology." My stomach tightened. "What did Dad do?" She smiled. "He thanked Trevor politely, then called that Detective Jackson put us in touch with. Apparently, they've been building a case. And Trevor's call violated the terms of his agreement not to contact us." I hugged her, proud of their growth and newfound confidence. Later that evening, as my family prepared to leave, I reflected on our journey. What had begun with a devastating text message had ultimately led to a healthier, more honest family dynamic than we'd ever had before. The crisis that could have torn us apart had instead revealed our true strength, not in financial resources or perfect harmony, but in our willingness to choose each other, flaws and all. Financial security matters, of course. But no balance sheet can measure the value of a family that faces challenges together with honesty and grace. No investment yields greater returns than relationships built on mutual respect and understanding. As I waved goodbye from my doorway, I thought about all the families out there navigating their own complicated relationships with money and love. If our story could help even one family have the difficult conversations we'd avoided for too long, then perhaps our painful Thanksgiving had served a greater purpose after all. What about you? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need this message. Remember, the strongest families aren't those without problems, they're those who face their problems together. Thank you for being part of this conversation. And I wish you the courage to build relationships richer than any bank account could ever be.